Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. I will switch to English for a reason you will quickly discover, so I would ask that you put your headsets on.
The day I could walk, my father took me up to the glacier at the back of my house. Today, what is not much of a glacier anymore is a longer hike from home. My father taught me how to debate, how to keep a critical eye about economics, politics, society. He was one of the initial scientists to claim climate change, to claim that all catastrophes we deal with today are our fault, that we need to resolve the issues where they originate from, here. We are all responsible, therefore it is our duty to engage for a better, peaceful world. My father came from Manchester. Please join us for a minute of silence for UK and for all nations that suffer today. Thank you. Merci à tous. Avant de continuer en anglais, pour notre audience internationale, je tenais à remercier l'INSEP, ainsi que tous nos amis français pour la...
Before continuing in English, I wanted to just thank INSEP and all the organizers, and within the framework of Euro 2016, I have received the ISO certification. It was difficult, but what a pleasure to come back to France.
Alan, Fabian, myself, then 5, Vincent, Gert, then 10, then 30, then 70, and today more than 140, broadcasted live and internationally. The Sport and Sustainability International movement, now NGO, has officially started. There is no turning back, nor stopping us right now. Together, we are on a mission to make this planet a better place. Sport must play a crucial role in shaping and leveraging sustainable, healthy, and just communities. I extend my thanks to my fellow founding directors, to the organizing committee, to all of those who have helped bring and make today possible. Ben, our CEO, the person behind the scene, and his team. But let me take a few seconds to congratulate Didier for his dedication in making today happen. I remember inviting him as a friend to our initial meeting in Lausanne, the Olympic city, where Didier, against all odds, with his frog t-shirt, so today you see he's got a suit, was surrounded by suits and ties, and he challenged us big times. He challenged SandSI, so our reaction was to work even harder and to actually integrate Didier, a true friend in our movement who could help us grow and share a positive image to the world of sport. So if you feel like challenging us, we will invite you to join for the next meeting. So DJ was not the only hurdle that, like a frog, we had to jump. Since then, in Munich, internal and external stakeholders have pushed us beyond our limits. You are not professional, we heard. That is true. We all work. We have other jobs. But we work for SandSI on a voluntary basis. Long days, long hours, long nights, and long weekends to reach where we stand today. Nothing would have been possible without the precious help we received this. Thank you very much. All different, but all together. I want this to be our motto. One single aspect unites us. None of us ever find a paved road ahead of us. We are always referred to the outliers, the underdogs, the rule breakers. No open doors automatically open. we still need to break in. Yet here you will find open arms. May SandSI become your house. May you help construct its foundations. A home where you will meet and exchange with hard but like-minded people. A place where professional and the most advanced innovative sustainability initiatives will grow. You will find there unlimited renewable energy to go back and confront all those who still challenge us, and you are not used to facing this, but you will go there with adequate tools. This will help you and our movement, our common mission, to succeed, that sustainability becomes the norm, and that we realize that our planet is our home. In front of such an expert panel, there is no need to detail the urgency of our task. Yet I'd rather praise the fact of being surrounded by people who, like myself, like my fellow colleagues, have dedicated their lives for making this planet a better place. We owe it to each of those who suffer already from climate change. We owe it to our children and grandchildren. We owe it to each species that populate paradise, a place actually called Earth. I'd like to thank Well for being a pioneer in supporting those crazy minds. Please join us, please applaud yourself. Merci à tous. Thanks to the Swiss citizens who voted yesterday historically for energy transition. May today be the official kickoff to a fantastic journey together. May our movement grow organically. Thank you very much.
Neil est plus grand que moi.
Neil is just a bit taller than I am. I will be speaking French for billions of reasons. The first is that we are in the Pierre de Coubertin Amphitheater, and he is the one who began at the end of the 19th century the Olympic Games. And he had this tradition of saying that French had to be recognized at a planetary level, and he wanted to, of course, spread French culture. So he wanted French language to be present in the Olympic movement. Over time, English has imposed itself, and I have basic English, but I will make an effort to speak French. I think it's necessary to do so. Thank you to INSEP for having hosted us here. It's an institute for which I worked for 20 years. 10 years ago, I left it. It's this beautiful brick lady, and also we would like to thank the International Bureau for having put together this wonderful operation for us. I'd like to step back a bit to talk about what happened in Munich. After that meeting, we said we have to do something. This incredible movement has to take off. It's something we're setting up here, and this is what we are going to be experiencing here in an extraordinary way. You really must understand that this is a historic day to the extent that there was a before today and then an after. This is the official creation of this federation, which is Sport and Sustainability International. There was, up to now, sustainable development of sports, which had a rather closed vision of itself to ensure continuity of sports. But now we're going to talk about sustainable development through sports and thanks to sports. So the idea is to open up our prospects in order to make and put sport at the service of society. So really to put ourselves at the service of people and the environment. So this truly is the stake we have here at hand today. And I will conclude by saying something very important, and that is that we're here to co-build a federation, to together build mechanisms. There's no vertical hierarchy. We're going to try to do our best to hear what you have to say, to share our experiences, to build a future that's beneficial to all, not more for the rich than the poor or the black or the white. It has to be a shared vision. The North and the South must live this passion together. We have to build this thanks to sport for future generations. And the future, we talk about them in a theoretical way, but in a concrete way through these initiatives, we must live this. That's why we have built this day and structured it as we have. So the morning is aimed at showing you some global and local initiatives which have been set up, which will enable you to see how sport can be useful, can be helpful. The first part of the morning will be about local initiatives. This is at the, let's say, local, meaning national level in France. And then after the break, we will look at a more global perspective. And after that, you will be able to see what our reasoning is within SandSI to build a better future, whether it be local, that is both local and global. So it's of benefit to all. Throughout the afternoon, we'll do something incredible. Together, we will build this afternoon, and especially with a live stream on YouTube, thanks to INSEP TV. And I spent 20 years in the International Federation and the Triathlon Federation. This is going to be live, so on a planetary level, this work will be available. Usually we're doing this in a closed way. It's going to be done in an open way. This is all part of our initiative. We want to build things in a constructive way because we're tired of people talking without doing anything. So we want, yes, criticism, but it has to be constructive. That is the purpose of this day. Now, I would just like to give you some technical details before giving the floor to Alan Hershkowitz, who will be moderating this morning. This is a bilingual day, French and English. You've got interpretation, and on the live stream on YouTube, it's in English. So we have interpreters who will, throughout the day, be interpreting from French to English, from English to French, and at lunch, we will be eating at the INSEP cafeteria, and I hope that you will run into some European world champions and Olympians and try to capitalize on this. And we also have a dinner, which we hope will be very friendly. If you're interested in participating in the dinner, please come and see us throughout the day. Now I will give Alan Hershkowitz the floor, who can tell us a few words. We'll then introduce another speaker, and the day will continue. Thank you.
Bonjour. J'étais à l'école longtemps, mais j'oubliais tous. Alors,
I went to school in Grenoble and a long time ago, but I forgot everything, so I'm going to use English. Okay?
great. I'm going to talk in English. I too, first of all, want to thank the organizers and, of course, express my sympathy for what happened in Manchester and in the Middle East and in South America and in Africa and in Asia, everybody who's suffering. We are so privileged to be able to be where we are, to be able to do the work that we do. So my heart goes out as well. I also want to thank Didier and Benjamin and Neil and Fabian and Vincent and a few others who put this event together. This is a very important assembly. It is not about sports. We are here because we are all trying to figure out how to address some very, very urgent ecological issues. We are literally in a situation where the functional integrity of the Earth's ecosystems are breaking down. We are undermining the functional integrity of the biosphere. The list of issues that we have to deal with: climate change, ocean acidification, deforestation, proliferation of wastes, water scarcity, unhealthy food, environmental refugees. There's so many issues that need urgent attention, and there is no law, global or national, that says as ecological challenges increase, governments need to respond accordingly. And in fact, the ecological pressures we're facing is outpacing government action. And as we know from the Paris Agreement, the actions of non-state actors is fundamental to resolving the ecological issues that we have to address. It's non-state actors, the private sector, NGOs, that are going to come together and really, frankly, do most of the work that needs to be done to decarbonize our atmosphere and to protect habitat and protect species. We're losing 4,000 or 5,000 species a year. We're in the 6th great extinction. So why are we here as sports-interested people? Because the platform of sports is so spectacularly influential, both culturally and economically. It's one of the largest economic sectors, and of course, it's one of the greatest cultural influences. So we are using our position as sustainability experts, as influential people in sports, to change the marketplace, to change cultural assumptions about how we relate to the planet. How should we relate to the ecosystems that give us water to drink? How should we relate to the ecosystem that gives us air to breathe? We treat the atmosphere like a sewer. We have, in my country, every lake and river is contaminated with mercury. There is no fish in the United States that is not contaminated with mercury. These are severe, urgent problems, and the biggest source of that mercury has been coal-fired power plants. We need to get off of fossil fuels. We need to do more. Some of us were last October in the Vatican, where the Pope held a meeting, Sport at the Service of Humanity. The Pope himself reached out to the sports industry for help in getting his message out. He understood the visibility of sports to communicate. And his message to those of us who were there was 2 words: do more. And that's what we need to do. We're facing urgent issues, and that's why this assembly is so important. We are pulling together the great work of all of you. There's so much good work happening in sustainability in sports. There are organizations in North America, there are organizations throughout Europe, in the UK, budding organizations in Asia, interest in Africa, organizations and interest in South America. We need to come together and help each other. And that's what SandSI is about. That's what Sport and Sustainability International is about. It is not to replace anything. It is to build on the good work that's taking place and help advance that work, make it more effective, make it more visible, provide it with more resources. Of course, the Paris Agreement, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, these are urgent ecological objectives that we need to advance. In the country that I live in, the United States, we have a very difficult situation right now, and given the footprint and the global influence of the United States, what is happening there is of concern to all of us. And that's why coming together here in Europe and bringing together representatives from more than 30 countries, from 6 continents, to challenge, frankly, scientifically illiterate or deceptive representations about the threats that we face. We must push back. We must push back. Already in the United States, 23 major environmental laws have been reversed since the new president has taken over. And a great number of those have to do with carbon. The United States right now is the only industrialized country in the world that is reducing the resources needed to address climate change. And this assembly is a message not only to the United States, but to the rest of the world, that we cannot accept that. So this is a very important environmental gathering of people who have spectacular influence through the sports platform. All sectors have influence, and all sectors need to act. Government, religion, science, film, music, and sport. And among all the platforms out there, it's my belief, and I've been doing environmental work for almost 40 years, that the sports industry offers a spectacular, powerful platform. So I want to thank you for being here and for using your position and your knowledge for our cause. Today, this event was complicated to put together, and it involved some resources to put together. And Rick Fedrizzi, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the International Well Building Institute, said that he would like to help support this work. And he did in a major way, and he's actually he underwrote this effort. For those of you who don't know Rick Fedrizzi, the U.S. Green Buildings Council, which is arguably the single most influential organization in the world in accelerating the proliferation of green buildings and the LEED certification, was invented by Rick Fedrizzi. Rick Fedrizzi is, without a doubt, the single most influential person in the world's green building movement. He recently left the U.S. Green Buildings Council to focus on wellness of people in the buildings. And he has now taken over the International Well Building Institute, which I believe is the next important tool that we're going to use to help advance sustainability. So I want to thank Rick for your support and ask you to come up and say a few words. And then after Rick, we're going to go into our panels. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. You always get such a nice introduction from Alan. It's bonjour. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. And I'm pleased to be with you and gathered in this hall, named for one of the great voices in sport, the founder of the modern Olympics, Pierre de Coubertin. De Coubertin excelled in communicating a vision of competition and excellence and inclusion through sport. He's often quoted talking about the joy of effort, the value of example, and the importance of respect and universal ethics. And given the times that we live in, as Alan mentioned, we could certainly use a lot more of that inspiration. But one quote of his struck a chord with me as I was preparing to come and join you here today in Paris. And that is, he said, "The human spirit soars with hope when lifted by an encouraging word." And I think that's true. I think it's equally true that our spirits soar when your surroundings encourage you, when they improve your bodies and they still your minds. At IWBI, the International Well Building Institute, that is at the heart of what we do, using our buildings, any space, to encourage health and well-being. Since the earliest days of the green building movement, our buildings have been engines of innovation and models for improved environmental performance. Now, at IWBI, we're leading sustainability's what I call the second wave. The first wave of sustainability was external environment. The second wave is internal, and it's human. Moving just beyond environmental performance and focusing on human performance, putting people at the center of design and operational decisions in the spaces and places where we all spend, whether we like to believe it or not, 90% of our lives. We do it through a building standard called WELL, which in only 2 short years can boast nearly 100 million square feet of registered and certified space across 414 projects in more than 28 countries. This work is possible because of the nearly 1,500 and growing group of well-accredited professionals who help us carry out this work. By setting performance requirements in 7 categories that have been scientifically proven to impact people's health: air, water, nourishment, light, fitness, comfort, and mind, WELL harnesses the built environment as a tool that works in the background to improve our comfort and wellness, drive better health choices, and generally enhance our health and our sense of well-being. And we can only imagine how important that is in the world of sport. And of course, our sports venues are places where we can do, as de Coubertin asks, lead by example, providing better buildings, not just for better health and for finely tuned athletes, but for everyone that depend on these buildings, our coaches, our training staff, our administrators, and certainly our fans. IWBI is proud to be a sponsor of this event, and we hope it will encourage you to take a look at WELL as a part of your sustainability commitments to both the planet and the people who gather in your venues every day to celebrate the pursuit of excellence. Thank you very much for everything that you do. Thank you.
Okay, you know, these are big issues we're dealing with, not necessarily resolvable, certainly not in my lifetime. Global warming won't be resolved in my lifetime. Ocean acidification won't be resolved in my lifetime. Deforestation won't be resolved in my lifetime. These are big issues. We're talking about some pretty big numbers. And our first group of panelists represent enormously important organizations with huge visibility, and they're doing, frankly, some of the most important work in sport and sustainability in the world. Actually, since we've never found life anywhere else outside of here, I'd say the most important work in the universe, the known universe. So I'd like to ask Maël Besson and Julia Pallé and Viviane Fraisse and Didier and Marc Bultez to come on up. Take a seat. Okay, thanks all of you for being here, and I'm sorry I didn't get to say hello this morning because I just flew in 45 minutes ago. So, but we will say hello later. So, the Ministry of Sport in France, Maël Besson, he's going to speak first. He's the head of sustainability projects for the Ministry of Sport in France. I don't know of any other government agency in any government anywhere that has a Ministry of Sport as actively committed to sustainability as the French Ministry of Sport. Think about it. I mean, you all are expert in this field. You know the terrain. I've traveled around the world. You've traveled around the world. I don't know of any government agency that has taken a stronger stand in promoting sustainability in sport than the French Ministry of Sport, and Maël is the head of that program. The work you're doing is enormously important, and I'm always honored to be in your presence, even though I enjoy it at the same time. So I'd like you to come up and say, if you could speak from there or you could come up here. What would you prefer? Maël Besson.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, but I speak French. My English is not really good. But I might slide in English. Donc, je travaille au ministère des Sports français sur...
So I work on this sustainability in sport within the sports ministry. I will not explain why the sports minister is involved in this. I simply want to give you the three main areas of work of our mission. One is to define the strategy and the ambitions of France in sport within sustainable development. We want to develop expertise and knowledge in this area because we have new challenges that we have to rise to these challenges. We need expertise, we need the tools, so we have to develop expertise, tools, and knowledge. And of course, we have to mobilize all those involved in sports so that they can be committed to this. We have developed 2 national strategies over time. A first one from 2010 to 2013, a second from 2015 to 2020. Now we're on the second one, which is an environmental transition strategy. The idea is to put forward the ideal, but to highlight the road to get to this ideal, to reach it. And we will ask that the main actions be presented. We have mobilized action. There's been the signing and the building of a charter for a commitment, bringing together about 20 organizers of main sports events. This charter was co-built, and it wasn't just coming from up on high from the ministry, where the minister would give some orders, but it was something that was very constructive. We all sat at a table, as I said earlier. Solutions don't necessarily exist. We have to create them together. No one has all the knowledge. So we got together with about 10 organizers of big events, Viviane, Julia, Karine, there's several who are there, and we asked ourselves how we could act to get further, you know, in terms of sustainable development and environmental issues. We quickly realized that many charters and main principles had been defined in our national strategies for sustainable development in sport. We had done this ourselves. In charters, we had seen this. There were main principles in many areas, but what seemed to us the most relevant was to try to have figures for benchmarks on food, on transport, on waste. What were the most ambitious but realistic in 3 years to receive? Which figures would be possible? Which would show that we really are reaching a benchmark on various topics? And we started to build, and so we became associated with the WWF to have real expertise in the environment, and also so that we would be sure that we were on the right track. And ultimately, we have 2021 organizers of major sports events who have signed this charter of commitment, of engagement soon. With the Raider Cup in June, we will have 22. And there are other signatures which will be coming with other organizers that are now underway. And theyese commitments are listed here. I will not go into detail in all of these, but we're talking about figures like 50% of sustainable food in the entire organization, for fans, for spectators, for VIPs, for the volunteers, for the teams as well. And behind this, you have a grid of what we mean by 50% sustainable food. What does this mean? It's in a grid. The WWF put this together for us. It's like a matrix. I think you've all had to face this. You've probably all had to face this at some point. What do we mean? You know, what should we give a priority to? An organic product coming from afar or a local one? The WWF set up a matrix according to the types of food with various characteristics which should be a priority, and that would help us define sustainable food for us. 80% of journeys made using active mobility, public transport or car sharing. 80% of purchases made using CSR selection criteria. 20% reduction in waste, 60% of waste that's reused, recycled, or recovered. So we have come up with about 15 indicators, but the work does not stop here. We put together this matrix, and now what we need is to build the tools for monitoring this, but also to see how we can reach these goals. Sometimes we come up against real difficulties in areas where there is no solution as such. And I think all organizers of events, for goodies, you know, what can be sustainable on the market, we don't know. So what can we put together? What can we do to foster development of a sector on this? Within the ministry, with regard to this charter, there were several ambitions. One was to help the organizers of these events move forward. And among these 21 sports organizers who are, you know, big buyers as sponsors, and they have very significant influence. It's also a way to influence the events organizing sector. And I hope that no one working in the restaurant business that wants to work in sports events, I hope none of them will refuse to work with these CSR approaches. They should have 50% sustainable food within their events. And we can easily imagine that we are influencing the events organizing sector within our country. Obviously, we want to, you know, give added value to the French sector. This is, you know, there is the charter that has been given visibility. This is to show the know-how and the model that France is giving on this topic. So there were several ambitions. Now we are thinking about how this can be reached at a smaller scale. But yes, we talked about the large-scale events, but also this should be done at smaller-scale events. One last goal within the ministry, which we considered important. The solutions do not necessarily exist. We have to innovate. We have to experiment. But only major events can absorb these innovations, can experiment. So we have to see how we can find the best solution, and then how we can take these questions and spread them to smaller events, smaller scale events. So I will not go into more detail. I'm not sure how much time I had to speak. You've reached your time limits, say the others. So I just wanted to thank you, thank SandSI, the organization, because of course we know that this is a good solution. The charter is a true example of when we get to a table, we really discuss things, and it shows the co-construction that's possible and the positive results that come of this. SandSI has ambitions. We don't exactly know where this will lead us, but I'm sure it will be down a positive road. And it's by sharing that necessarily we will succeed in going further. One last photo. For me, this shows us sustainable development. So you see, you know, waste, it's not always very sexy as an image. And it's hard to sell this to big organizations, but this is a work of art made of skis. So extraordinary things can be made with, let's say, subjects that are not necessarily very attractive. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Maël. A tremendous amount of work, great work, has been done, pulling all of that together, coming to agreement on the various issues, and now implementing it. And thank you for all your help over the years, helping us think our way to today. Thanks very much. Yeah, so I just want to ask our panelists to be mindful of the time, and if you're going a little over, I'm just going to give you a note because Didier told me I have to do that. So I don't know of any sport that was ever invented specifically to address an environmental issue. Formula E was invented to teach the world how to move away from fossil fuel-based transportation. I remember once being in the south of France with some young, hip people, and a Prius drove by. And I said, I have one of those cars. And one of the gentlemen with me said, I'd never buy that car. It looks like a suppository. And if you don't know what a suppository is, look it up. He goes, I'm looking for a car that feels great when I drive it and looks great when I drive it. And for those of you who know about Formula E, those cars, I've never driven one, so I don't know what it feels like, but they look pretty cool. But the point is that along with Tesla and the revolution in electric vehicles, Formula E is really helping to instigate a revolution in the way we're thinking about the place that electric-based transportation, solar and renewable energy-based electricity to power electric cars. Julia Pallé is the sustainability manager for Formula E. She's been taking her message all around the world. Julia?
I'm definitely taller, smaller than the other speakers. Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julia Pallé.
Today. Obviously, I'm French, as you can hear it. And before I start the presentation, a quick word on Formula E and the link with France. Formula E was actually born in France because Formula E has been created in between European Commission, FIA, which is Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, or governing body, and obviously our CEO, Alejandro Agag. So there's a very close link in between Paris, I would say, and Formula E being an international championship. Off we go. Formula E is obviously the electric street racing series. So the main difference is that we have sustainability in our DNA. We've been created to promote electric transportation so that the world would globally adopt electric vehicles, and we would help resolving one of the key issues causing climate change, which is air pollution. Obviously, that's about like the transport sector. The main difference is that we race inner cities because we bring the electric vehicles on the streets of the people that we want one day will be buying an electric car instead of a fossil fuel car. And of course, also Formula E is using innovation because it's all about being a technological laboratory to push innovation around electric vehicles. So obviously everyone is thinking about the batteries, but it's not only, it can be also the powertrain, the tires, because we use hybrid tires, which is kind of like unusual in motorsport. Normally it's one set of tires for the rain, one set when it's sunny, etc. And all this obviously to push and advance the transition to a low carbon economy and kind of like sustainable transportation. The three pillars of Formula E is technology, because it's all about the technology. We have teams researching, doing R&D as part of the race, testing the new innovations. It's about perceptions. That's really the key of Formula E, showing that electric cars can be fast, fun, reliable, really sexy also. And infrastructure. So that's something that we foster, because when we come to a city, we have some sort of like informal commitment with the city on the fact that the city acknowledges that it's important for them and for its citizens to develop sustainable transportation and electric mobility. So the Formula E cars are 100% electric, but they're also 100% powered by renewable fuel, because we understand that it's only fully beneficial if the electricity is coming from a clean source. We've found a great startup in UK, close to London, that is producing this glycerin fuel that is literally zero emission, no noise, no smoke, no smell, nothing, no NOx, no CO2, nothing. And that's something that is really important to us. We are pushing this commitment beyond only just powering the cars, that we are part of the RE100 group, and that's our aim to power entirely the events. For example, in Paris, I think we were already 60% powered the entire event on renewables. As I said, we are a platform for cross-industry collaboration, which means that it's not only about the teams that come at FormulaE and want to test a technology and an innovation, it's also about the partners. So for example, DHL has helped us and is testing delivery technologies throughout the world to deliver all the material and the logistics of FormulaE. We are using a regional, by-regional approach for our calendar, which is also very unusual in the motorsport world. We are using wireless charging for electric cars. So imagine one day you're stopped at red light in the traffic and your car is going to charge because there's a wireless kind of like plug just below the car. So that's really the future of like smart and connected cities. Just a few examples, trying to save the time. That's also about, because we don't believe that the future is owning your own electric car. It's also really much about sharing. And that's why we're testing the driverless cars called the Robo-Race. Those cars, as you can see, have no drivers. And they are made to, they are fully electric too, and they are made really to advance these technologies, where one day you will call maybe a similar car, it will come and take you, drive you to the supermarket, and then like go and take your friend that wants to go to the cinema. And that's really what we believe the future is in terms of transportation, like sharing one car for, I don't know, like 10 different people in the day. We already see the results of all those research and this technology that has been through since 2014 now, when we started in Beijing. You can see the Jaguar I-PACE concept and the Renault Trésor, which are derived directly from the innovation on the track in the garages of FormulaE. So that's great, because that's really the point. When you create a championship, you want to transfer the technology innovation from track to road. So here we go. It's all about impacting positively. So I would say FormulaE had a great DNA about that, but we are working hard to keep the pace and do more, as Ellen would say. So just a few words on what we do so far. We've done at the very beginning, and hi Denis, a life cycle assessment with Quantis to measure our impact and understand where we needed to improve. And after this, those very helpful analysis, we've decided to implement a pilot project, Pierre-Luigi, on ISO 20001 in London, London 2015. And we are now working towards the certification of the entire championship. So that's for next season. I would agree with Neil that it's very hard, but I think it's really necessary and really important to show that it's possible to do it, and to show that international recognition is really worth it. As I was saying, we have a commitment to use 100% renewable energy on our events, not only to power the cars. And we are also working with our partner NL to offset entirely the emissions of the championship. I'm going to Rome on Thursday to discuss that, so I'll be able to give you some updates at the end of the week. Obviously, we've discussed a lot about the impact on the environment, but it's all about also impacting positively the people, and we have an important legacy program. I was mentioning already our stakeholders, but it's really important to include obviously our host cities, because without them we could not, I would say, display and widespread our messages to the people that we want to send that across. We are very lucky to be racing in really sustainable cities. Paris probably is one of the most iconic ones. We've been racing in Hong Kong this season. We went to Mexico, that is facing major challenges in terms of transportation. So each time it's really meaningful, and we really hope that we're bringing solution and kind of shaking ideas on how they can improve. It's also about our partners using our platform to advance the ideas and get together to connect. So here are some examples of what we've done so far. DHL has created the eStory Challenge, which was a platform gathering all the innovations of teams, partners, stakeholders, gathering to within FormulaE to innovate. The Smart Cities initiated by FIA has been here to help and advance on safe, sustainable and connected cities. So obviously FormulaE has a good role in that. And we are working now with UNEP on the Breathe Life campaign. Okay. Last but not least, the legacy. So we have an international foundation partner for who we raise funds and we support. The image that you see has been made in conjunction with Prince Albert of Monaco Foundation. We took a car in Gridland and we made it race. Initially we wanted on an iceberg, but they were all melting and crackling, so we had to go on the ice cap. We always try to have a local charity on our races. In Paris, that was Du Sport et Plus. So it's really important to be linked to the local community and try to help them. And that's Project ICE, as you can see, and I briefly touched on. The benefits, let's go. And that's what I said. Basically, we believe that the future is like electric, shared, and autonomous. That's our CEO, Alejandro Agag. And that's it.
Yeah, we need a cultural shift, and that really is doing it. As Julia pointed out, getting ISO certified is a pretty complicated endeavor. To have ISO applied to Roland-Garros, to a multi-week tennis event, is an extraordinarily complicated undertaking. Viviane Fraisse has overseen that process, and now she's going to tell us a little bit about what she did and what she plans to do. She's leading the way in Grand Slam events, and there's a lot of good work happening in Grand Slam events. I know that is true certainly for the US Open. They're doing great work also. Viviane, do you want to come on up?
Bonjour à tous. Je vais choisir de parler français.
I will speak French. Well, to pay tribute to Pierre de Coubertin, but also it's quite convenient for me. So I'm going to talk to you about the Tennis Federation's sustainable development approach. We began it in 2008, and we signed a charter with the Ministry of the Environment at the time, and also the Environment for Energy Control and Environment. The idea was to reduce our environmental impact. Then we calculated our carbon footprint. We launched quite a bit of action starting in 2010. There was sorting garbage. There were the green teams that were heightening awareness of sustainable development. There was carpooling also that was set up. And we then felt the need to set up a real sustainable development strategy which cover our three perimeters, which are headquarters at Roland-Garros, the regional leagues of the traditional sports, and our events. And of course, beginning by the Roland-Garros tournament, which is our major event. So we worked on the certification of the event in 2014, which we then did achieve. And the last element was signing this charter, which we did sign with the sports ministry, and with the WWF, which has committed us to taking this road. So it was in 2014 that we certified the tournament. We got this certification for 3 years. Now we're starting a new cycle for the next 3 years, and we will be audited for 5 days during the tournament. So the main part starts on this Sunday, and I won't go into great detail on this certification, but it's a system that rewards responsible management, and it's been enormous for us. That's why we've gone back to certification. It has had a huge positive impact internally because it's a process of ongoing improvement. It has enabled us to have a responsible procurement program for over many years. And we've had, legally, we've had a better structure. We've had greater assessment of training. And externally, it motivates our stakeholders. This is definite, especially, our service providers. And this has attracted responsible partners. And our historical partners could also take initiatives together with us so we could build together with them. So in this context, for 3 years, we have had the luck to have the tournament Roland-Garros going on during the Sustainable Development Week. There's even the Roland-Garros Sustainable Day, June 5th, which enables us to have further heightened awareness of the public and do a lot of communication on this event. So our main objectives, well, we're already talking about them. There is the tournament, which is now already underway. It's to involve our stakeholders. I'll talk about this. Throughout the year, we work with our partners to build initiatives. It's the best way, the best terrain for innovation. This is this tree, which heightens awareness on renewable energy, whether it be on food. We work with all our partners on this. JC Deco with the power pools, and we've really understood that it is with our partners that we can best and most innovate. And of course, our players are greatest stakeholders. We got them really involved last year. We made a video with them, and we are going to do it again this year on Friday of this week. They are really mobilized on this, on the food aspect. They're thrilled to do this. And there was Garbinier and Kurzak, who won the tournament last year. After this video clip, they definitely wanted to meet all our green teams, and there was a really nice moment there, a special moment spent with her. So the second goal is to provide access to all. We had this experience at the media center yesterday on the need to make the stadium accessible to everyone. Every year we work on improving our facilities. We have teams that are dedicated to people with handicaps, with disabilities, and on the 8th of June, we have a special day. Many people from different associations, people who have disabilities, and regardless of what the handicaps are, the disabilities are, we are headed toward a new Roland-Garros. We want to modernize it. We want to expand the stadium. And the ultimate goal is that we be 100% accessible as a stadium. And we're, let's say, heading for 2020 or 2021. Irrespective of the disabilities, we want to be able to host people with these disabilities at our stadium. Of course, we want to improve our environmental impact, reduce negative impact in transport. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, of course, we're working on reducing water, energy, and paper consumption. The policy is also to increase waste sorting. Our green teams have an enhanced role now, and our sustainable development partners want to work with our green teams. So we're going to have innovative experiments going on, and it's the best way to heighten awareness of the spectators. We are going to really try to beef up our teams. We want to develop our social and community actions. We have the Charity Day and Kids Day on the 27th of May. This is before the main day of the tournament. There will be this day, and the profits go to associations. We will have also a Wheelchairs for All Day, and the Musketeers can play, and they can play against champions in these various sports. And we're taking also other actions. We have One Day, One Charity is being highlighted, and this is being done every day. The ministry has raised the bar very high when asking us to offer sustainable food. We have a 3-year plan. We've worked really hard with it, and we have very committed service providers, and we will have a day on the 5th of June where we're going to try to offer sustainable food, and let's say in the next 3 years we are going to try to work on having entirely sustainable food. That means local, organic, fair trade criteria. And we have people who've been working for 4 years. We're lucky to have Gail Monfils, who is our ambassador on this topic. The last goal is to reaffirm our values. We think that these major sports events and our tournament are a great opportunity to reiterate our values, our ethics against doping, against corruption, and we have to reaffirm sports values, Olympic values. This year, we also have decided to put forth the volunteers. We have the heads of the clubs, and for some years now, they've been invited. It's the first Monday of the tournament. They're invited. I think really showing the value of the volunteers in sport is essential, because they are the ones who bring together these events within the federations. Just some figures from last year, which we are working to improve this year. I'll just take a few. We were lucky to have 66 people using public transport, and we have those coming in also sustainable transport means. We have recycled 300 tons of organic waste, and we are working on how this organic waste can be dealt with, and we are going to spread this to other services so that we can have a better waste management. There's also 300,000 euros, which we were able to give to various associations, let's say from Kids Day, and giving this to clubs and associations. And then you've got the stars of the village. This is the Roland-Garros village. We had a really nice time yesterday during this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Viviane. That's so great. Recording, keeping track of the information and making it public, and using your athletes. I don't know how many of you have seen the video with Djokovic and Nadal and Monfils and others talking about recycling. Using that is just great. This work is what we have to get done everywhere. Imagine if every event, every sporting event, every music event brought the same kind of attention to this issue as what we're hearing now. Didier Lehénaff, I've had the pleasure of speaking with him about 10 times a day for the past 6 months. Spectacular energy, really has put this event together with Benjamin Camus and a couple of others, but Didier has really been the engine putting this together. When he said, I'm going to make this happen just a few months ago, I said, maybe in the fall, and he said, no, we have to do it around Roland-Garros, and he did it. He invented the concept of eco games. He is the head of SVPlanète, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Une correction.
Just one correction. Despite all the efforts Alan is making to translate some expressions, and some things are not always SVPlanète is, yes, please for the planet, but also S for sport, V for vert, which is green, and then, yes, the rest is, as he said, planet. So now I will talk about my eco games. The first thing I want to say is, as we've said, for the e-formula, eco-friendly sports are designed for sports. We have taken the issue upside down, and about 15 years ago, we wondered how could we create a 100% environmentally friendly sport. Well, it's easier because we don't have to change an existing organization, but it's much more difficult on the other hand because you're constantly wondering how we can become a standard, a benchmark, so it could be copy and pasted on a planetary level. That's what we worked on with One Standard for the Planet, and I will be presenting this now. So I will go very quickly through the introductory slide saying that the plan right now is in an increasingly worse situation if you look at all the different parameters, and sports bears a share of responsibility in this. We've seen, you know, the carbon footprint in sport for over a decade. We see how much sport has had an impact, whether this be in terms of water consumption, transport, CO2 emissions, greenhouse gases, waste, etc. A great deal of work has yet to be done, and a very specific question in the sports world is how, where, and when can we act? So you see the impact of sport in, you know, very specific parameters in energy. The Eco Games came about given that in sports, you've got all those involved in sports who are there together. You've got the participants, spectators, the organizers, sponsors, media, all those involved in sports are there. They're at these sports events. The second point is that the sports event is the sport window shop for the, for the better and the worse. And what comes to mind, of course, are, very positive or very negative images of players' behaviors, which give us, let's say, neither very good or very bad image of what sports can be. And it can be shocking, an image of what we see, let's say, in the headlines in papers or on TV. But sports events can be incredible labs to experiment in sustainability, and that is how I choose to see things. Each sports event, whether it be local, global, small, or big, has its responsibility in changing the way we do things. Today's theme, the theme this morning, and not everything we've heard, but most of them have shown that major events are showing the way of how things can change. With the Eco Games, we're taking this just a step further for reasons I will explain right away. What are the Eco Games? It's a remarkable and innovative initiative of French sport to fight against global warming. And I thank the WWF and the Ministry of Sports for having given us this label, which is incredible. It is something that's a great communication tool. It's an event which we can sum up in the following way. These are eco-design games, and they are eco-built, 100%. It's hard to implement this because there are governance issues which come up because it is co-built. There's no vertical hierarchy. Everyone can be involved. Everyone can have an influence on the mechanisms. So you have to rethink sports governance. And now, as I was the international triathlon president, I remember having to look at reports I had to sign with principles with hundreds of pages. My idea was, instead of having very cumbersome contracts, and I can see some former CEOs here in the country, we know the heavy nature of these tens of thousands of pages. Our idea is to have 10 principles, which I will present to you, because our ideas, well, you don't have to talk about rules if you've got the principles. The rules they stem from the principles. So if you follow the principles, everything will go well. And there was this formula. We have a type of event which is genetically nature and people oriented. And here are the 10 principles, which I will present quickly. The first is that these are genetically dedicated to sustainability. The second is that this is the local environment, nature and people who will decide about things and not the other way around. That means depending on the territory that is hosting the event and the people living there, we will organize things. So we don't come as conquerors to take over. Our reasoning is not we're the colonialists. And I'm weighing my words when I say this because, macro-sociologically, this has been used as an expression, because when sports events come, usually they have their specifications and the territory adapts to them. Here it's the opposite. We look at the territory, see what it's made up of, to then build an event that fits with the place and its inhabitants. The third principle is that it has to be accessible to all, old, young, rich or not, with disabilities or not, and whether the level of sports is high or not. And fourth principle is the well-being, to feel better rather than pure performance. Fifth principle, systematically, we will be seeking out environmental performance of all present instead of just performance. So performance is one aspect with criteria which will be taken into account. That is knowledge of the environment, of observation, of transport used to get to the site, and this applies to participants, organizers, and the public. One point which is important to us, which I discovered in the world of triathlon long ago, I had an international sports leader who wanted to always hear people say KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And this struck me at the time. I didn't really understand what it meant, but I have since. It means let's keep things simple, like seek to simplify things, which should take over when we're organizing things. That is, the easier it is, the more reader-friendly, the better people will understand the events. Seventh principle is to make do with what you have. You don't always have to invent things all over again. Just look at what exists next to you instead of having to import technology from across the planet. Heavy equipment that has to come from afar. Let's look at what exists on site and let's try to capitalize on that. Eighth principle. We want to take an approach which is against the all economics approach. You know that sports has been like this, there's one important aspect of the sports world, which is economics, but social and environment, those aspects have been much smaller. We want to, strike a new balance in this stool with these three legs so that the economic flows have to be in balance with the social and environmental issues. And thankfully, we have interpreters, because I think my translation here is not very good, but decompartmentalizing, in fact, the English is good. I'm really tired of hearing that the coach is there to coach, the athlete to do his sports, the manager to manage, and the leaders are there to be in charge. We all have to be responsible. We all have to feel responsible and shoulder our responsibilities for what's happening in our world. It's not because we, for example, are an athlete, we have to scream at someone to get more supplies. We have to look at things with empathy, try to solve the problems we experience. So in eco games, we try to find solutions in order to decompartmentalize the roles so that people are aware of what's going on in these sports events so they can shoulder their responsibilities in order not to have negative criticism but constructive principle. And the last strong principle is that the extra sports program must be as strong as the sports program. So specifically, concretely what this means in terms of waste management, when you have 1,500 people, it is the participants themselves will take part in waste management. It's called self-waste management, so that the competitors themselves must throw out their own waste. Just look here, there is nothing on the grass. There's nothing on the lawn, no littering. And here we have the WWF sign. It is made of wood, and what it's put on is also a plan. And here you have the Burgundy Eco Games in Burgundy. When I was in triathlon, I remember we would suffer from exhaust fumes of cars and even boats. But we have no motorized vehicles in Eco Games, so we always find solutions. This is a country road, and these people were in agreement to accompany the games. And I decided here, and we have minimalism as another approach. This was in Brazil in 2004. We use what there is. There was a trawler that was there, and instead of taking it away, it became the finishing line. Now we have eco trophies as well. In Aquitaine, there was oyster tasting, and then there are trophies in the form of the oyster shells, which had the names of the participants engraved in them. I've heard of enough from presidents of federations saying that, you know, we have to have, let's say, at least 15% women. But if you have a mixed bike and run, you'll have 50% women. So just think about your rules. They should be logical. This is a bike and run with a chariot, with families. And this is again in the Aquitaine region where the parents can also participate. One slide on the Eco Games for Paris, taking place next week at the Institute over 3 days. The topic is Future Generations. And there will be a conference, What Sport on Which Planet for the Future, tomorrow. So if you have nothing to do next Monday, come. Then the second day is Kids Day. We created three universes: water world, waste world, and sustainability world. And for an entire day, kids will be doing sports to heighten awareness in these three areas. And the third day is a general audience day where we are going to ask them about how they take part in sports. And, you know, do you know about sustainability and sustainable development? And we will have an exchange with them on this. I will conclude with this slide just to present something that's very important. If you want an event to have a meaning, it has to tell a story. All our Eco Games tell a story related to the area, related to the Eco Games and to the people there. The Aquitaine Eco Games is about the Arcassin basin. So for several days, through these sports events, the story is told. In Normandy, we have something quite extraordinary, hard for organized. We work on the area that's between high tide and low tide. So it is an ephemeral event. And we tell the story of this, low tide and high tide and, through sports events throughout that weekend we do this. And then the Eco Games held in Guyana is something that's 100% feminine. women in nature. They have their survival events, sports events, and we ask them to think and to go into action. Then we have the Brazil Eco Games. It's a water story between the rainforests, the Rio de Contas, which is, very related to water. And then we have the Eco Games in Quebec. And the whole topic there is global warming and the melting snows, because they complain that they don't have snow, but they have melting snow. And in 2018, we are going to have Eco Games held in Quebec on this. And then Eco Games Senegal, which we're now working on in Casamance, in the southern part of the country, will be on mangroves and traditions. I was lucky to meet someone who planted 152 million mangrove plants, and we spoke about sports and how we can involve sports in reforestation. Thank you for your attention.
The reason I talk to Didier 10 times a day is because I love listening to him. I called him up so I could get some more. It's just a pleasure listening to you, Didier. We're going to talk a little bit about wastes now. So the United States generates between 14 and 16 billion tons of waste every year. Mining waste, oil and gas industry waste, utility waste, municipal waste, hazardous waste, nuclear wastes, cement kilns, sludge, incinerator ash, on and on. A lot of waste. About 15 billion tons just in the United States. If we assume that the United States produces a third of all the wastes in the world, which it doesn't, that would mean there's about 45 billion tons of waste produced every year on the planet. In 10 years, 450 billion tons of waste we will have to manage. The U.S. Science Advisory Board looked at this issue and they called it an ecological disaster in the making. In the United States, 92% of all the plastics thrown out are not recovered for recycling. 96% of all the food waste thrown out, of over 1 billion pounds of food waste, 96% is not recovered for composting. And as you know, the ocean has become a repository for plastic waste. According to the United Nations, there may be as much as 5 trillion pieces of plastic in the ocean. There may soon be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Okay? Managing our waste is an enormous issue. And as we know, wastes result from highly refined products that have already gone through the raw material acquisition and manufacturing transportation stage. They're highly refined. They have a lot of embedded energy, a lot of embedded value. So it is crucial that we develop a circular economy to recover wastes for reuse. Marc Bultez is the director of Recyclerie Sportive. He is trying to promote the circular economy throughout sports. It is one of the most important endeavors that needs to become widely adopted. The most fundamental activity in all visions of sustainability is recycling. And Marc is helping to make that happen.
Merci.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Marc. I come from a small association. I'm not going to solve all of the problems of waste management in sports, and generally speaking. I was lucky enough to come here as a practitioner, as a sport. I was doing judo. Then I was also lucky to work here and to lose my job. And this has allowed me to work on these subjects of waste management and sustainable development, subject which had interested me from the very start. Everybody has had at home a bicycle. It broke down. It could not be repaired. It became too small. You wanted a bigger one. The problem of the waste for a bicycle, that's what this is it, but it's the same for all kinds of sports equipment in general. So my association, Sports Recycling, we try to go to zero waste in sports. So when we talk about zero waste, zero waste, what is it? It means to consume responsibly. Consumption is a real power that the average citizen can have, the event organizer, anybody who's consuming something, knowing if the produce you're using is ethical, responsible, sustainable. So it's a real subject. Then you have to increase the lifespan of a given object, make sure that this object will last as long as possible. So we teach people how to maintain and keep their material. Then we use the object, a bicycle which became too small for a child, well, it can be given to another one. And then there's the question of reusing, transforming. So we undo the object to do something else with it, like the bicycle, for example. Here, you can see that this one is used for decoration. The main function of the object is changed into something else. Millions of initiatives can be taken like this. So this is a priority. Well, we are also resourcing. We are part of the in a resourcing site. We have a number of activities. We collect material with over 30 tons of metal were recuperated with professionals, with citizens, with institutions and other actors, people who get all the equipment, or people who collect a lot of equipment. So on sports events as well, we took part in coach rail recently. We try to collect all the equipment, and then we try to value, but the value should not be energy hungry. You know about the problems of waste in general. In terms of solution, there's always the possibility of bury the waste. This is still done a lot. There is the possibility to incinerate the waste, to burn them. And then there are also recycling networks, which is the last stage in the zero waste process, because recycling is an industrial process. You have to heat up the material, you have to melt it. It has an impact on the environment, which is of course much greater than just reusing or repairing something. So we have a workshop where people can come. We have tools. People have to become a member of the association, and they can come to work and to repair. And there are people who are there to tell them how to do it, to teach them or how to repair or transform some kind of sports equipment. Then the material, the equipment is redistributed. We have a little store of solidarity. We had one in Paris, which started in recently. It's there. It's an alternative store, which at least does exist. So redistribute equipment at a very low price, so that it is affordable for almost everyone, and it makes sports equipment available. We have a lot of spare parts as well. People can come and get bits and pieces to create things, and we also redistribute to people who might need this sports equipment. Then we have a major activity, which is sensitization. We teach people about recycling, to self-repair, how to repair equipment or transform it. These are creation workshops where people come. So these were the 4 activities. there's a lot of positive fallback through the youth, sports, etc. This encourages everyone to practice sports. We realize that in the Île-de-France area, 1 person out of 5 left sports practice for a question of organization or cost as well, which are getting important in order to be able to practice some sports. So we try to redefine sports according to 4 pillars. We try to make people autonomous in their sports activity through sports activity to reinforce muscle cardiology with these sports waste that we reuse, tires, strings. We don't need a lot of equipment to organize some sports activities. Sports is like slow food as opposed to fast food. So the second pillar is organizing conferences. We realize that we try to communicate knowledges on nourishment, on the impact of stress on our body with specialists in natural food, and to explain, for example, what the problems that we all have can be solved, or to remove what is preventing the sports activity. And then we have a third pillar, which is what I would call active mobility. On a sports event, 80% about is linked to transportation. So how can we make it possible for people to go somewhere from point A to point B? The future vehicle for us is rather the bicycle than the automobile, of course. We teach people, we do bike schooling to teach people how to move around actively on a bicycle. And then we have a last pillar, which is the useful sports, useful for the environment. When we go and run, we pick up waste, which is lying on the ground in the park. We also can use sports activity to help digging a trench in a shared garden, etc. All sorts of activities which make sports useful for the environment. And then, well, we realized that there is some sort of ecosystem which was set up after this year and a half that we've been existing. We have about 600 members in our association. We have 8 wage earners, people who work for us. So we have about 15 students who come around and give help and give a hand. We have conferences. We have a number of stakeholders who are also talking about sports and sustainable development, people who are in the various sports professions. So we try to react to these social challenges, put sports activity at so that everybody can do it, and we try to create employment through a social and solidarity economy. Thank you.
Fantastic work. I was listening to that. It has to be pervasive and adopted by all of our communities. Okay, so we're going to take a little break now, come back in about 25 minutes, and we're going to hear some more from more folks, and then we'll end around 12:15 for lunch. And then this afternoon, we're going to discuss how to take all these great ideas and come together. This is your organization. This is your effort. Come together and take this work around the world and to communities that host sports throughout the world. So let's come back in about 25 minutes. Thank you.
Une dernière information, pour les personnes qui sont intéressées à nous rejoindre pour le dîner, il nous faut finaliser.
For those who would want to join us for dinner, the list has to be closed by lunch, so please let us know during the coffee break. It will be at 7:30 in a restaurant in Vincennes.